Hello, this is Dale. It's Monday, and I'm joined by Mike.
Hey, Dale. Disaster seems to be looming somehow.
Yes. Oh, wait. Okay, this is better. I kind of match the angles now, too. This evening,
Jeez.
this guy's a little off kilter. You just noticed?
Wait, which is it going to be? Oh, the humanity, or
Nearer my
the
God to thee.
unsinkable Titanic sinks?
Yes, right. Yeah. Well,
Yes.
both of them were disasters. We're going to take a lighthearted look at failure this evening. But first, I mentioned something that wasn't a failure. 800 years precisely today, 800 years ago, um, it was the start of the Magna Carta in England. King
Mm.
John, you may remember that guy that gave Robin Hood. Robin Hood was a real guy. I don't know if he did, really was wearing prancing through the woods with his pals, but yeah, King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, and the lasting legacy of that,
In
besides
1315, or
800 years ago today, so
what?
1215, 1215, I think
Oh,
was.
12,
Yeah.
15. Yes. Okay.
And so
It's
that was
off by
today,
100 years.
precisely.
I
So
missed it by.
we're going to need to wait another 100 years before the 100th anniversary. So I'll see you then, Mike. And some of our shows
Okay.
may
All
almost be
right.
done by then. Yeah.
Yes.
Our Sunday series about the
And
charter may be done by then. Go ahead.
well, and many argue that that and the preceding there was a, and I forget the name of the document that happened like at 10 something.
1066.
Yeah, right. It was a statement of rights. And it was basically, I think they had it with the monarchy over there, and they were about to run them out of town on the end of a pitchfork,
Well,
and so
we
they
may
conceded
think that
certain rights
we're
to them.
all derived from English. Actually, we're all derived from Danish people. Danish people. Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
Danish people and all kinds of Scandinavians, and they took over that whole area. Yeah, that's
I love Dana.
well, they're called the English because this came from Anglish. They were Angles. But anyway, so it's just like this. They were their own kind of angles. And so that was 800
Yes.
years ago today. And the big concept there was that, see if this sounds like it matches today, that officials, the king in this case, but it could just as easily be county commissioners, must be accountable. They are not above the law.
Hmm.
Even though they may
Right.
say, I know we're breaking the law and I don't care. He really did say that. So that was Keith Heck. So what Mike and I thought that we would do is we'd go down through a dispassionate list of the great successes of these commissioners and talk about how, well, they may kind of match the idea of these things over my shoulders. And we'll see. We'll give you a very clear rendition of the things about which they crow the most. So, Mike, you want to kick this off, bud?
Yes, sure, I will. But before I do, I wanted to set the record straight. Last week, we were talking about Sunny Valley Sand and Gravel, and I mentioned also that there was a place out in Williams making a bunch of noise and dust and stuff like that, disturbing their neighbors. That was not Williams. That was Murphy, where that was going on. So if I offended anybody in Murphy or Williams, I apologize profusely. And
They are really different places, but they are fairly close to each other geographically.
yes, and one is on the way to the other, and as you're driving through, well, I don't want to insult them by indicating that they're kind of it's vague to me.
Yeah. All right.
Because I
Well,
already
so end
have.
of insults.
So yes.
Now,
So that hang on a second, because I'm not
yeah.
done. And there is one other thing that we talked about, I believe, on Saturday. It may have been Friday too.
Mhm.
But we had talked about that you had gotten news that there was a possibility that the HB 4175 that was supposed to sunset in January of 2016 was going to be adjusted in some way. The sunset was going to be moved or removed. And indeed, that has moved through the House and the Senate. It's Senate Bill 26 to remove the sunset from that 4175. And that is now sitting on the governor's desk waiting for a signature.
Good point, Mike.
Okay.
Well, I will put to you, Mike, what is, in your opinion, the number one thing that government should do? Number one.
Nothing.
Oh, you mean get out of the way? Get out of the way, government.
Yeah, it shouldn't be hindering people. And I think that, when they hear that, they are insulted by that as an idea. But the thing is that all the government appears to really be good at is hindering people in some way. And if it's hindering people so that they do not then violate the rights of their neighbor, I suppose that perhaps there's a place for that. But for the most part, they just end up hindering people from doing the things that they would do following their natural inclination. And so, the government having the idea that it somehow is going to spur on economic development by choosing little projects that should be done that they can give some money to. That's just silliness.
They would choose
winners
and losers. Yeah, nice.
They would choose, well, and they have. And this recent thing with Rogue Roasters. Now, they may well have thought, hey, look, we can do this wonderful thing for Rogue Roasters. And it is a wonderful thing for Rogue Roasters. For them, it's going to be a massive shot in the arm for these people. It really is going to be. However, it's really going to screw their competitors. I mean, that's not going to be good for, other coffee joints that are hanging on the edge of the cliff. Maybe no, this is not good for them.
It's a $50,000 gift, and not even giving it to them as a loan. And here's an important point. Sarah Walker was saying, well, yeah, I know that we were going to pass this through the Illinois Valley Community Development Organization, IVCDO, but they're not really ready yet. Now, hold on a second there. First of all, she insists that IVCDO, Illinois Valley Community Development, is really countywide. Now, what does she mean by that? What she means is that they loan money to one restaurant in Grants Pass. So now they're no longer countywide. That does not make them countywide. They did one. And why do you think that they did that? It's sort of convenient. Hey, we're going to loan them, here's 50 cents or whatever it was. The other thing is, well, they voted, she pressed this through, that they would give a bunch of money to the IVCDO right away. And then when they said, well, when Simon says, well, shouldn't IVCDO be running this? And they probably would give them half as a loan or maybe all as a loan, and they would repay it. No, they're not ready. What do you mean they're not ready? Well, as I recall it, they may not be ready for another 6 months. Hey, why did you give them the money right away? Why didn't you wait 5 3/4 months and then give them the money? They're not going to be ready. What's not to get ready? Well, we need to put together a form. Put together a panel. Well, we need to develop. Don't give them the money today. They're not ready to hand it out.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Now let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If the IVCDO, in other words, you channel the money through them and then they make loans to these little things. How much does IVCDO take out of that for their administrative costs?
That's something they never talk about.
And
they
why?
never talk about that.
And why do you need them in the loop?
Yep.
I mean, this is the inefficiencies of government. How does government not have the ability to write a check to Rogue Roasters, which they're going to do now. But
I understand.
But let's say,
okay, go ahead.
What could somebody in IVCDO makes an assessment of the people that they're going to do this for?
Yes, they do, and I could understand why there'd be a temptation There's a temptation on my part to get the commissioners out of this process, because that way they can't be accused, they can't be guilty of handing out money to their friends. Instead, IVCDO will be handing out money to their friends.
Right. It's just, I mean, whose cronies do you want capitalized here?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just the stupidest thing that there is going. You know what? It should be indiscriminate. It should be, if you're gonna do this thing, if you want to do it right, you take the entire budget, the entire economic development budget, and you blow it all out in one deal. And you say, first come, first serve, all permit fees and all, any hindrance that the county is going to put on you until this money is gone is on us.
Yes,
you want to see some stuff happen? Stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, it'd be raising all
absolutely
boats, and it would be equal for
everybody. Number one, you're going to find out. Right. You're going to find out who's motivated in the community to start getting the ball rolling. And once the ball starts rolling, it has to continue rolling. They're going to be building homes. They're going to be building things here, left and right. And they're going to have to pay people for that. And that money goes out in the community. And listen, the amount that they give, the 300,000 or 350,000 or whatever their annual allotment is, would be the small end of this economic development. They poo-poo this every time it's proposed to them. Oh, that would never ever work. Oh, we tried that before and it didn't work. Well, did you tell anybody about it? Probably not. You know,
it's so lucky for these guys that we're not commissioners, because not only would we follow up on the loans, don't forget now that the previous CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Rosemary Paget, actually said in an open meeting that she was instructed not to follow up on loans and not to follow up on whether people were spending the money right. Can you imagine if you went back and you looked at some of these gifts, just the gifts? I mean, the loans are obvious, but the gifts that we've given to these guys, and say, have you spent the money on this, or did you just fly off to Rio with it? What have you done? Imagine how many of these characters would be in a world of trouble if we found out how they spent the money that they were just given as a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? Every rock you turn over, it seems we come up with more and more and more and more corruption, and it just seems to be gaining speed, rolling downhill.
You find termites.
Now we were going to come up.
Oh no, but there's three things. One is get out of the way. Number two is keep us safe, and number three is, would you please do something about economic development? Please. Those are the three things I think are the most important. Don't be liars and cheaters would be nice, but those are the goals.
Well, I mean, to me, the economic development thing is get out of the way. Listen, government cannot do anything about economic development. It's not their job. It's not their business. They don't understand it.
Well, at least
they just don't get it. They're not wired that way. These people don't do that.
I'll tell you how. One is, at least you could send a letter off to BLM saying, stop jumping on our miners. At least you could get out of the way when it comes to having do things like marijuana. You don't want to smoke it. I don't either. But what you could do is you could not say to people who are bringing money into their own pockets into the area, oh, well, you're not worth anything unless you give us a gift. Don't say that kind of stuff. So that would be, all right. So what we've done is we've put together a little bit of a list of the major efforts made by the commissioners. What's one thing that they can crow about, and they have been crowing about, Mike? I have a list. You have a list. Go ahead. Well,
I think the biggest thing on their list in terms of crowing about something has to be Dimmick Tower.
Absolutely.
I mean, they haven't. What else could there be? They would have been crowing about Manor Development if it even slightly appeared to be getting off the ground, and it clearly is not. We're waiting. There's a death watch on Manor Development, and when that announcement is going to come down that it's a complete and utter failure.
What are they waiting for? That's very weird.
Yeah.
Speaking of manor
they're waiting
development.
for us to forget that it exists.
Yes. Speaking
You know?
of manor development, here's a question. We don't know, but here's a question. Since we now know, because they've admitted it, that Cheryl Walker is involved in some kind of profit-making enterprise, supposedly, with hemp, and and also that Simon Hare has finally admitted that he's involved in the same project. Are they partners? We don't know. They haven't said yet. They haven't confessed, but they haven't said that. Who were the other people with whom Simon Hare has recently been involved? And you mentioned it. Who was one of his biggest contributors to his campaign? And then Simon pushed through this project saying it doesn't really matter what they've done in the past. Who was that?
Yeah, Larry Osborne and Jim Frick.
Yeah. So does it make you wonder? I know there's been some guesses. We don't know yet. The Oregonian says they don't know. Is it possible that the usual list of suspects, whatever that was from that movie, that are involved in this one too?
Yeah, one has to wonder, don't they?
So
they do have
Larry
to
wonder. And Jim, if you're watching the show, you could set us straight. Hey, you mentioned my name. Right. Are you involved?
Right. Yeah,
we don't know.
And you guys are completely wrong. And here's why.
You're always wrong. As the finance director, no, as the HR director pointed out to me, Mr. Matthews, you are lying all the time. And that's when I said you were a good public servant. Yeah.
Yes.
So
we came
Tower,
but there's Dimmick Tower.
And there was just a little bit more about Dimmick Tower. So I have a little quote here that I thought was pretty interesting from the Dimmick Tower and the progress that's being made. Now, here's what the finance director, Arthur O'Hare, is really turning out to be quite a gem. This is what he said about what's going to happen with now they've torn the building down. As Keith points out, well, we tore it down, hey, we tore it down. It's really good that we tore it down. Yeah, municipalities tear down buildings all the time. What are you going to do with that property? Here's what's going to be done. Arthur O'Hare says we have tentatively set up a schedule to discuss the possibility of potentially developing a plan, and that tentative schedule to discuss the possibility of potentially developing a plan is going to happen in September.
Wow. Boy, that's pretty ironclad, I mean, that there probably is no wiggle in that plan there. That's ironclad.
That's their best project. That's their best project so far. It's the only one that hasn't blown up in their face or went down with icebergs
yet.
Right.
Yeah, and that really depends on your interpretation, because I mean the Dimmick Tower had its problems, and so I mean it didn't go exactly as they intended that it would.
Oh, and the Courier refused to write anything about it. Refused to write anything about the $100,000 cost overrun. Then Simon Hare later came in and lied. This is not an exaggeration. It's not a misstatement. It's a lie that the reason it went over was because of federal agencies. No, it didn't. It went over because you counted the number of floors as 3 instead of 4. That's about the most boneheaded thing you can think of. It wasn't a hidden floor either.
And this is
1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead.
Yes, and that was their their opus there.
Okay, so that's huge success number 1. It's much a success as this. Okay, so what's huge success number 2 in your estimation there, please, Mike Jones?
Yeah, I think a close second to that has to be the manor development thing.
I would pick North Valley Industrial Park next, but okay, manor development. So what do we
Okay.
now know about
All right.
manor development? Well, one
No, I
thing
mean,
that we know.
okay. Yeah. The North Valley Industrial Park is actually hemorrhaging money, and that's so I get what you're talking about there. But in terms of the scale, they promised this massive scale of hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars flowing into the place, and then we had nothing.
Butkus in both
But
meanings of that
kiss.
word.
Yeah.
Yes, right. And so manor development, the upshot for us was, this is just so hilarious, is that after Simon Hare got done talking with Moody's, that's the investment company, and that they look at you about your credit worthiness, their official reports, according to Simon Hare's information they gave them, was that's the best thing in economic development that this county has going for it. They were convinced of it. They didn't obviously talk to anybody else. They might have talked with Jim Moore of the Daily Courier, would have come up with the same answer, or maybe over at Cajo. Oh yes, it's the best thing ever. The problem is, if it, so what was the reason why they wanted this great rating? So they could potentially borrow money.
Borrow money. Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's
what we
that
need
would
to
be
do.
the icing on the
Borrow
cake,
money.
buddy. Borrow
Yes.
money.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when government borrows money, government usually does something really responsible and socially uplifting with it.
Well, that way we can build 100 more. We can put 100 more plaques on rocks and create all those jobs. Because if one plaque on a rock creates 90 full-time family wage jobs, certainly 100 of them will create 9,000 in the Illinois Valley. It's a little review, but we're putting it all in one group for you.
And that's where I think you come in third or fourth is these economic development, foolishnesses that they have had. Everything that the IBCDO was doing, the wheelchair ramps, the plaques on the rocks.
This is their reward.
Yes, right. Their Rogue Roasters loan and the library. I mean, they blew out an entire year worth of economic development funds to the library.
They did. It was $300,000. But please, Mike, since we're on 300,000, tell us about the $600,000 that was wasted.
$600,000. I forgot about the 600,000. That really, I mean, it depends on, because we were listing these as, their successes.
Yes, these are their big successes.
We were starting from the top and going, so I guess it's near the bottom of the list. The $600,000 snafu.
Tell us a little bit about it, would you please?
Well, okay. All right. For those who don't know, I can't imagine anybody not knowing at this point, but the assessor's office wanted some new software because the software that they had was somehow inadequate.
It was working, and it's the same software that a lot of other counties use.
I was getting my tax bill. That's all you really need to know about that. But so they wanted the new software. It was going to cost $600,000. Everybody said, even Bill Meyer, he went on the show. Oh, yeah, from what I hear about it now, that probably seems like it's somewhat reasonable. And that everybody was going that way because, the naked people are walking over here and they've all said that it's that's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to go with that line too.
Yeah, well, he means the king's new clothes, the emperor's new clothes. That's
yes,
why
of course.
There are naked people in his story.
But there's a whole bunch of naked people. Yeah, so you have to spice this up somehow.
There's always naked people in every story that Mike tells. Yes, go ahead, Mike.
That's not true. Now I'm being slandered. But
it's not slander. You have to prove monetary repercussions.
Yes. All right. Yes, I'll do that right after we're done here. No, I think that a bunch of people thought that everybody else is smarter than they are. And since those people are saying that, this is okay, everybody shut up and let it happen, because of course these people know more than we do. And so their defensive argument was pretty good. obviously, because it convinced a lot of people. Well, guess what? It was wrong. And the whole thing, we're 2 years down the road here, and it's a complete failure. So they didn't spend all of 600, and who knows, it's different. It's just like this road fund thing.
Yes.
It's how much money they spend is depend on who you talk to and what day it is.
It varies from $1.95 to $800,000. That's right.
Yes. But let's look at what the price tags would have been. Okay.
Yes.
They were scheduled to pay $600,000 for this software over so many years,
which we don't own.
Then they were going to, which we don't own, right? Yes, it's a license to us for that payment. Then, on top of the $600,000, it was another $60,000 a year in maintenance and support costs
to that company, right? And it's the same company that makes the software they're using now.
Right. So that's when you call them on the phone and say, hey, listen, I'm having a little bit of a hard time moving, this line item from cell A to cell B, and they tell you how to do it.
This software
or they get on your
what
system.
solution do you have? Right. And then there's another
or they get on the system remotely. Hang on a second. I'm getting to that. Yeah. So then ultimately they couldn't figure that out. Even after they are paying the support fee, they still couldn't figure out how to make this software work. So what did they do? They hired somebody at $60,000 a year as a permanent employee to come in and, be in charge of making this software work.
And as they described it, this was his sole duty.
Yeah, right. And so I'm not sure how long after that announcement they decided to announce that the whole thing is, but it wasn't.
It didn't
seem like it was long after that one.
Did they say?
I don't know. That's a good question.
We don't know.
That's a good question. You know what? If they absorbed that guy, I want to know what software they're using now. I want to know if that guy's still working for them, because I know government doesn't like to give up when they start adding subjects to their fiefdom. They don't like to give those people up. I want that guy to go away now because he's obviously useless because we're using a different software now.
Well, in addition to that,
say bye-bye.
Once the boat goes down, you still count everybody in the water as passengers. And over here too, there's still passengers on the Hindenburg, but they're now slightly toastier.
Yes. Well,
get out the marshmallow.
So anyway, that's the software thing, and I'd be interested to know what they're using now. I'd be willing to bet. Now, you want to talk about economic development. They probably could have either hired a small startup software company, or they could have farmed us out to the high school and say, hey, listen, why don't you guys take your coding monkey guys, and here we'll give you these guidelines and you write us a software program. I'd be willing to bet that they could have risen to that occasion. And you want to talk about, that's the kind of thing that government should be doing if they're going to do that sort of thing. But instead, they just gave to a bunch of other code monkeys who apparently didn't do a very good job of writing the program. And they spent a crap load of money. And they could have just as easily spent almost nothing, but what they could have promised these departments is we'll load you up with all kinds of new computers and software to help you do all this stuff.
Now, what would happen to that assessor, Connie Roach, who's going to be running for office again in a year? What would happen to that assessor in private enterprise?
Gone. Listen, you would have heard about her firing before you heard about them going back to the other software. That's what would have happened in the private sector.
Well, they'd also
because
had
they don't
a reaction.
Do stuff like that.
It had a reaction among the populace 2 levies ago. That's how often these things are happening, is that one of the prime reasons that people didn't vote for that levy was the $600,000 question. It seemed like everybody was talking about it. Right. It hurt them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So good to remind us of that. Thank you very much, Dale.
You are welcome, sir. That's one reason why you want to have somebody around with institutional memory.
And about 9 months from now, we really need to be firing hard on this kind of stuff as we're coming up to the
Absolutely.
primary, because we have to do some. It'd be nice to knock these guys out in the primary, just totally nuke them
The clerk
before the general even happens.
and the assessor.
Right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
just get
the mayor. Oh yeah, and the mayor of Dave Junction.
All these cronies. No, their tenure has been a testament to failure.
No, a testament to failure. Thank you very much, Mike, for reminding me of the theme of today's show, a lighthearted look at failure. Okay, how about the 4 junk ordinances?
Oh, yes.
Remember how hard they were pressing for that?
Listen, in other countries, communist countries where they arrange elections and force people to vote, it's hard to get an 80-90% vote otherwise. 80% in this country is a trouncing the likes of which you should not ever be able to live down. Ever.
They wouldn't listen. We kept telling them this is a bad idea. Bad idea. They wouldn't listen.
As elections go in this country, 80% is nuclear.
Yeah.
That is, we're done.
Yeah.
So that was an incredible failure, and that ought to be, we ought to be saying that every 5 minutes.
And
about
that
9 months
was
from now.
started by Simon Hare. Don't get this wrong, everybody. It was started by Simon Hare, who then kind of backed out of it, and then Keith Eck and Cheryl Walker were happy to jump in. Just one little thing about the cheating that took place then. You may recall, Mike, that there was that every time they talked about it was Cheryl, sometimes Keith, and everybody had to listen to long lectures by Cheryl. And we finally convinced them to let the other side have some kind of say for a little period of time. And so a little longer than 3 minutes. So Cheryl finally agreed to that. And then she said, well, if we're going to have any kind of debate, then the other side has to go first. No, that's not the way debates work. You go with the person that's proposing it first, because that's the weak position, and then that's followed up by the anti-position. And she and Keith argued that you had to let the other guys go first because they were advocating for something. No, they're not. They're on the other side. Even Simon Hare called that. Wait, I'm almost there. Even Simon Hare called that a kangaroo court.
Yes. Well, you know what? That is really, really silly. But it's not very surprising at all, because that's what they do now. If somebody during public comment on the proposing of a particular item where they're taking public comment on that thing, your everyday people who get up and come up and talk about it for 3 minutes, they go sit down, and then they take that department head. You want to say anything about that? Did that guy hit a point that you want to come up and rebut? Oh, okay, come on up. And then that guy comes up and slams the guy. Of course, he has no recourse now. He's done. He's sitting over there in the audience, and they're going to nuke his argument. And then whatever head of whatever department goes and sits down. Then the next person comes up, says something. Oh, hey, Bill, do you have anything to say about this one? Oh, sure. Yeah, he comes up. No, that's insanity. But that's sandwiching. Yes.
One of the most recent things that happened is at the budget hearings. I got up and I was talking about the elected officials compensation committee and how I'd tried to say this and this, right? And I thought I had a couple of good points. So Arthur O'Hare, remember that name? Arthur O'Hare, the finance director, he gets up and he says, well, of course, Mr. Matthews wasn't allowed to talk, because you're not allowed to talk at such meetings. And people were like, whoa, that Dale Matthews sure looks like a fool. My man, that Arthur O'Hare really put him in his place. Why, what a burn on Dale Matthews. The only problem is it was completely false. It might sound good. He sits down with a self-satisfied grin. Woohoo! I really put that Dale Matthews in his place. But I talked to him afterwards and I said, but that's not true. And that's when J.J. Schofield, the guy that was trying to stop me from speaking, which you're allowed to do at such meetings. He said, well, you're lying all the time, Mr. Matthews. See, this is the people who are arrayed against you, and it sounds really good, except it's not true. So for those of you who say, well, when Sandy Casanelli was running the meeting, she let people respond, and that turned into a circus. No, what was happening was people like Arthur O'Hare would get up and then say something that was totally, absolutely, completely false to make you look bad, and you had no result. And so Sandy said, you have 30 seconds to rebut, but only about that. And then people would. You know what happened? The staff stopped doing that.
Yeah, right. Which I think is good. But the thing is that this board doesn't want the staff to stop doing that.
Yep.
That's the difference.
Okay, so now, how about the 2013? I mean, just go back 3 years, because the Courier will only admit that there were 3 previous levies, right? They don't think back a decade where there's been a levy almost every, or a taxing district almost every single year, almost. A couple of little gaps. But how about the 2013, 2014, 2015 levies, and how these commissioners pushed through on them? Oh, we had nothing to do with this last one, Mr. Matthews. It's part of the permanent record. We've shown you the videotape. That's just a big lie.
Yeah, listen, it doesn't even matter that they didn't have a public hand in the thing. If SOS is doing it, if Cuffs is doing it, local government is doing it.
Why do you say that, Mike
Jones? This is who Cuffs and SOS are, because the core membership of both groups are either cronies of local government officials or they are local government officials.
Yes, that's right.
It's just moronic here. And they wonder why they can't get a grassroots effort going, because it isn't a grassroots effort. A grassroots effort comes from the passion that people feel, and they manufacture the thing. Happens all by itself. Like this thing where we fought against the levy this year, we didn't need anybody to organize that for us. We did it ourselves. Everybody had their own little part. Dale and I were doing it. Jim Rafferty was doing it. Bill Hunker was doing it. Ward Ockenden was doing it. All kinds of people were doing it, and that's grassroots. There was no organization. There was nobody calling the shots and saying what was going to be done and when. Somebody say, hey, I got an idea. Let's put an ad in here telling people that rents are going to go up. Yeah, okay. And then people would donate and get that stuff going on. Hey, let's put some commercials on KJO. And then one of the guys who runs commercials on KJO said he heard one of those. He goes, hey, wait a minute. I buy time with them every day. I want your commercial in my spot until the levy passes or until the levy's done. And then boom, that's grassroots. This phony SOS and phony Cuffs thing is complete horse crap.
Why don't you tell people what you think, Mike?
Pardon my language. No, it's stupid. You know what? If you want a grassroots operation, why don't you talk to some of the people who were involved in going against this levy and ask them what their ideas about funding law enforcement are, and then listen to them instead of poo-pooing and go, well, that's not a levy, so we don't like it. Ugh.
Tell us about the library taxing district. The commissioners were completely behind that, 100% behind the library taxing district. And what was one of the major things that brought that down?
Well, one of the major things that brought that down was porn in the library. And Judy Aarons came in and just innocently said, well, I'm concerned that they don't have filters on the computers. And then Dale went over there and found out, yeah, they don't have any filters on the computers. And that was right in the middle when they had their taxing district thing up and going. Right in the middle of that campaign. And then, so Dale put the videos out.
And put something in the voters pamphlet.
Yes, right. That's right. And that just basically took it out. And I forget the ratio. I was trying to remember what the ratio was on that. But anyway, as soon as they didn't win that, well, they just went to the county, and county gave them a bunch of money, and And, you know,
They did. They did.
that's
Well, speaking of voters pamphlet, how about the voters pamphlet debacle where Cheryl Walker said, "People are begging me not to have a voters pamphlet for this
yes.
election." Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was on the ordinances. It's because she didn't want anybody to, read the specifics about it. And she would say these things. She says some pretty outlandish stuff sometimes but in this particular case, she was saying that I'm running into people in the supermarket who are saying, "Oh, please don't give me a voter's pamphlet."
Who is saying
That is,
this to her?
come on.
The
That's
voices in her
that is
head.
completely incredulous. You cannot. No one is going to originate that to begin with. Oh, another voter's pamphlet. I'm worried about the trees. Don't kill any more trees.
I can't take it. Not
Pamphlet.
another one. I would be forced to read it.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Okay, Mike. So Ready effectiveness. The effectiveness of the Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development, Inc. Their effectiveness for Josephine County.
Yeah, well, I guess we give them about, what, 25 grand a year?
Oh, it used to be a lot more than that. It used to be 75.
Oh, okay. And so what have they done?
Cheryl's been pressing for it real hard, and Cheryl is on their board of directors.
Yeah, just to answer the question, what have they done?
Oh, I can't think of anything. And every time that they talk about what they've done, they do the same thing. But you may recall that it's somebody that I think is a great guy out at the Ivy Airport area. They've got a smoke jumpers museum. Those guys out there are doing an outstanding job. And I was there when So Ready showed up, and people were like, "Oh, look, it's Michael Smith from So Ready." Well, as you recall, we've been here all along. And they're looking at each other. "No, you haven't." Well, and so we'll be telling people about the great success that we have with you. And they're going, "You were never here." No, go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because just the other day, maybe was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago at the weekly business session, Cheryl Walker was touting the Smoke Jumper Museum like it was her accomplishment or something. And I'm thinking, maybe you should be thanking Sandy Casanelli when you're talking about that, because I think that's her baby.
That's right. And just a little bit more history about it is the previous airports director was making it so hard for these guys. It got down to the point where they were having to account for how high the grass would be cut or not. He was saying, "This fence is a non-starter. We can't have a fence out here. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't do this other thing." The guy was a real piece of work, and he hated me, because what would happen is he'd come to the county weekly business session. "Well, I feel that we shouldn't do anything with these guys." And then he'd go to their meeting and say, "Well, I really argued in your favor." And I said, "You know what? I have it on tape." "No, you didn't. You did exactly the opposite." "Well, Mr. Matthews, you've seen Keith Eck do this to me. You're saying that it's on tape." "Well, tape is impossible. It doesn't record me correctly." And the guy was not long for this world, at least the Josephine County world. But they were pressing hard against the smoke jumpers, and Roger Brandt and those guys out there just kept persevering. They did. This was a citizen-driven initiative, a real one, a real grassroots, this high, kind of effort, and they succeeded in spite of the county commission.
Right. Yes. And it's funny how that works, but that's the sort of thing that you need to inspire, is go, you know what would you do? I mean, you could ask this question: what would you do if we got the hell out of your way on whatever it is that you were planning on doing? What would you do?
Well, this is what I suggested at a mining,
and then get out of the way.
At a mining committee meeting. I said, "How would you miners here feel about this?" They were adults, but how would you miners here feel about this if what the county government did was get out of your way, or maybe assign someone part-time to help you cut through the bureaucratic tape imposed by the county to make it easier? Right. And so Jack Swift says, "No, I don't think I'd like that." You wouldn't like that? No, that's just more bureaucracy. No, it's helping you cut through the tape. Wow, that's a bad idea. You know what?
Yeah.
You just
Well,
can't
I
please
don't
some
know
people.
about hiring another person to
No,
help
no,
you
not
cut
hire.
through the tape. Just
No,
cut through the tape.
no, I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
Not hiring somebody else. Just getting the government red tape out of the way so that people who are some of the foundation, the bedrock of this county can succeed without throwing obstacles in their way.
Right.
That would be nice.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, do you have something? There's more, but okay. Here's
Well,
another.
I mean, we had what Manor Development,
Oh, oh.
IVCDO, Rogue Roasters, Dimmick Tower, the Library Economic Development.
So ready.
The
What?
airport pay raise.
Oh, yes,
How
right.
about that?
I've got one more thing about So Ready. So here's Simon
Okay.
Hare saying, I really don't think that we're getting anything out of this So Ready deal. And Cheryl Walker's, well, I'm the chairman of that. I really think that we do. No, I really don't think that we do. So the three commissioners were invited to a So Ready party kind of thing. But it was a party with a presentation, and they knew that before they went, all three commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
Simon Hare walks into this meeting thinking, I'm not going to give him the money. No way, no how. I'm just not going to give him the money. When he walked out after seeing the presentation, presented to a quorum of commissioners where county business was discussed, he was then completely convinced that we need to give him the money. So it's a perfect example of why you do not allow commissioners to break the law. And it's all about transparency and obeying the law. I don't care what the law is, we don't care. Because it had the intended effect. And he tried to say later, well, that was a social gathering. No, it wasn't. They don't do a presentation at a social gathering. Okay, you were talking about something else. What was that something else?
Oh, the airport pay raise.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, I mean it's smaller footnote compared to these others.
But. And what did Larry Graves say about the next day after Simon Hare voted in favor of the guy that gave him the most money for his reelection? What did Larry Graves say that he was going to need on the very next day?
More hours for the part-time workers out there. Yeah. So in other words, you basically would take these part-timers and bump them up to full-time.
Now, since Manor Development didn't work out, what have they been doing?
Yeah. And yeah, well, and I'm like I said before, I'm sure they can rationalize this whole deal, that they were working harder and more anyway, and we needed to have them on full time. And
I'm just using Larry Graves and his explanation of what they do out there, because he was asked, and one of the prime things they do is sweep up the runway. And so I guess we're supposed to believe that the rocks problem on the runway is worse today, double, than it's ever been before.
Worse than ever before. Well, that's what happens when you water the runway. The rocks just
go up. Right. That was Cheryl's suggestion of something that could be done out there. That's right. Water the runway.
Yeah, you know what? I think that, and if we go back to that piece of tape, he says, well, because of this, my guys are going to be doing a lot more work. I mean, he used that as rationale.
It is what he said.
So it is what he said. So when he tries to get out of it by saying that, they're doing more work anyway or whatever, then what did you mean when you said this?
And I asked Cheryl Walker at one meeting and Keith Eck at another, why do you keep saying it's costing us nothing? Because they've said this over and over and over, and they'll say it again probably Wednesday. It's not costing us anything. Why do you keep saying that when it has cost us something? It costs us these double of salaries for two guys. Not double of salaries, double of expense for two guys. And that, that's already been answered. You're not even answering it now. It hasn't been answered before.
Let's hear the dollar figure on that. What is the dollar figure on these people and how much more it's costing us for them? That is the cost.
There is no dollar figure, Mike Jones. What's the matter with you? There's no dollar figure because everything is false. Everything that Dale Matthews says, Mike Jones, is a lie. All right, so maybe the biggest one of all, coordination with the feds and pursuing this contract that's being violated on a daily basis by the federal government. They won't even send them a letter.
Yeah.
So,
well, and those are two different things, because one, they were supposed to come up with a coordination plan. Have they done that? What's the status of the coordination plan?
But Hicks, Wally Hicks, on his own, I think, or maybe in coordination with the commissioners, did send a letter. But we don't see the way it's supposed to work is that good thing they didn't respond with much, except they might have said, okay, what is your plan? Whoops. Because they don't have a plan. It's like saying, what's your plan for the Demic Tower? Whoops. They don't have a plan for the Demic Tower. And they don't have it. They don't have this either. I said to Simon, I said, what you do is you go find their plan. You have somebody sit down for a couple of days, rewrite their plan so it sounds like it's our plan, change the things that you don't like, and say, here's our plan. You base it on a template.
Right.
Their template. They're not doing that. They're not doing it. They're not doing it. We don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Look, we understand this whole thing of, well, what's your solution and all the rest of that. Okay, first of all, we're not paid through the wazoo to give you a solution.
Not our job.
We're not paid anything for anything. Okay, only your adulation.
Why don't you ask Rush Limbaugh what his solution is?
Yeah. Okay, but
for crying out loud,
there are a couple of things we could at least do a symbolic gesture. Well, that's only symbolic. It's better than nothing. And so the symbolic gesture, the first thing that I would do if I was a commissioner as a symbolic gesture is I would place, as a county commissioner, you can't do it. Did you know citizens can't do this? I would put an advisory question on the ballot. What do you think about the idea of declaring a moratorium? It doesn't mean it would have the force of law, because it wouldn't. What do you think that we should encourage the people who have been pressing us year after year after year for the levy, just to take a 4-year hiatus, just to put them, would you prefer that they continue doing it every year, or would you like them to take a break?
And they'll never do that because they don't want to know what the numbers are on that referendum.
Right. And then you would go to cuffs and SOS and whatever other name they're giving themselves this week, and you would say, look, it says here, knock it off. I would commit to saying, even if it's kind of a good idea, even if it's only 99 cents, I'm going to say no. We need a break from this. So during the first 4 years as a commissioner, I'd say, you can put anything you like on the ballot. You get the signatures, it's the law. But I'm going to say, I'm dead set against it. Don't do it. I'm totally opposed to this, and try to get the other commissioner to say the same. And then you wouldn't have to, we're really against it when we said we're for it. Yeah, we saw you on tape, Keith.
Yeah, but, the silly thing about this is you don't need it to be an advisory question on the ballot, because it's already been an actual question on the ballot.
But we need to be polled, Mike. We need an expensive poll to find out what we think.
We already have a poll.
We call it a vote.
We've been polled Yes.
Yeah, we're getting polled, all right, but not the way this is a family show. Yes.
Yes.
What kind of family watches this show?
I don't know.